debt, and that are these social entitlement programs. Next slide, Zach. Now, about this time, many members are probably ready to get up and claim 30 minutes in response on behalf of their constituents who say, wait, I paid into those social entitlement programs. That's not the government's money, that's my money. Week after week out of my paycheck, money went into Medicare. Money went into the Social Security account, for example. I paid in, therefore I get out. I want to acknowledge on the floor of the House of Representatives that that is true. You have paid in, we have paid in, we continue to pay in. But it's not the whole truth, as this chart indicates. You see, on average, if you made $71,000 a year, you and your spouse, through your working lives, you will have paid in, and this is an example for Medicare, about 35% of what you're paying out, of what you're getting. 35% of what you're getting. And that 65% difference, quite honestly, is paid for by the children of tomorrow. Almost all of it. Again, who don't have any voice in the matter because they don't exist yet. So the moral question that we have as a country is, how much more does a future generation have to pay so that we can have more on our plate now? And when you have budgets that do not balance, you are happy to say, when you vote for budgets that don't balance, you are happy to say that we're letting them pay the load. And that's different. That's the first time, and this is the first time in American history, as I know it, that we have basically said, we don't care. We don't care that our future generation, that the next generation will be worse off than us at our very expense. But that's exactly what we're doing when we don't pass balanced budgets. And like I mentioned earlier about the $100 trillion, thanks, Zach, it's not just the current debt load that we carry, it's what's coming. And that's what's depicted by the red line here that you'll notice is going nearly vertical. It's on a trajectory that we may not be able to arrest, that we may not be able to bend down back again if we don't get a hold of it now. And this is what happens when 10,000 people a day retire into programs that go unreformed. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. And that's why it's so important to get a hold of this problem now, to make these reforms now before we turn into Greece. And in our case, when that happens, it'll be a lot worse. Not just for us, but for the entire world. These figures do not lie. And by the way, most of these figures that I present tonight don't come from Todd Rokita's office. They come from the Budget Committee. The good Democratic members of the Budget Committee don't disagree with the numbers. I imagine there's disagreement, and have seen disagreement certainly on the committee about how to solve the problems that the data present. And I'm increasingly shocked and awed to hear members on the other side say that there really is no problem with the data, with the issues that the data present. But nonetheless, the data is the data, and the data does not lie. There's been offered some false solutions, I would say, to our problem of this debt, and I'd quickly like to dispel some of them. And I'd like a point of order asking the Speaker how many more minutes I have.
Gentleman has 8 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First false solution. We need more tax revenue. We're not taxing ourselves enough. And only if we tax more, especially from the quote-unquote rich, those who haven't paid their fair share, quote-unquote, we'd solve this debt problem. Well, let me address that for a minute. This is one of the slides that doesn't come from the Budget Committee. It comes from the IRS. I have no reason to dispute it. I saw it in the Wall Street Journal a couple years ago. And the bars represent where the money in this country is, the taxable revenue, where people's property is. And it's divided along income groups. And if you look at the far right of this chart, you'll see that the top, or the furthest right bars represent Americans who have taxable revenue of anywhere from $1 million to $10 million. And the largest, the highest bars, where the middle is, represent Americans who have taxable revenue of anywhere from $75,000 to $500,000 a year. So the point of this slide is you can take all the millionaires' money if you wanted, really make them pay their fair share. Take 100% of what they earn, and you'll have to assume two things: that they would continue producing, which of course they wouldn't, and you'd have to assume that they continue living in the country, which I assume they wouldn't. Look at the mass exodus going on in France now with a 75% marginal tax rate. But let's assume, for the sake of discussion, you take 100% of what they earn. You're not going to get enough revenue to pay off the debt. There are not enough Oprah Winfrey's, or when I'm in Lafayette, I like to say Purdue football coaches, to pay off this debt. If people are saying, like our president, that more revenue is needed to pay off the debt, they're coming for the middle class. They're coming for where the property is, where the money is. And that's in people who make anywhere from $75,000, $50,000, $75,000 to $500,000. Next slide. Another false solution: let's just get rid of all that foreign aid. And I'm the first to say we really got to examine who we give foreign aid to. I would say this also: we don't give foreign aid necessarily to people to other countries so that they can thank us. We do it because there's a strategic reason to do it, like our national security. But let's assume we cut out all foreign aid. You're only addressing about 2% of our federal spend. This is not something that you can solve the debt problem with. Next. Some say let's cut out defense. And I'll also be the first to say there is tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse in the military. So much that they can't even be audited. Not because there's a statute preventing it. They are so big and so sloppy and so leaderless in this fashion that they cannot get themselves to an audit table, and that is wrong. We should be maximizing every dollar we can to our war fighters who protect us, and we're not doing that now. But, Mr. Speaker, having said that, defense, if we had no defense, if we had no military, would only be a 20% cut in our overall spending. Not enough to balance the budget, not enough to solve this debt problem. We have several solutions to this, starting with the House Republican budget. Reform Medicare, reform Medicaid, reform Social Security, not cut on people who are in or on these programs right now because we don't have to. We have the luxury, if we act now, to reform these programs now, Mr. Speaker. You can go to rokita.house.gov to earn more. Only if you were born in 1958 or after are we offering a restructured program so that it's around for you, so that it's around for all Americans, future generations, and so that we don't have to hurt the people that are on them now. I'm out of time, Mr. Speaker, to go through all those right now. I'd like to come back at some point